Hi, my name is Anna. Recently, I became an accessory to a serious crime against a criminal gang in our city. I thought that it could only happen in movies, but it gets even more absurd when you find out that it all started when my boyfriend decided to become a monk. I was dating a guy named Jim. Everything was fine until a couple of months ago when he started distancing himself from me. At first, we started to see each other less because he found some evening part-time job. Then I kept hearing excuses about why he couldn't go on a date with me. Sometimes he was too tired after work. Sometimes he was suddenly called into the office. It was things like that that kept happening. We started seeing each other only a couple of times a week, and I felt like I was losing him. And then he just disappeared. Jim didn't respond to messages or phone calls, and he didn't come to his college classes. I was very worried, and I didn't even know what to think. In my head, I imagined 1,000 stories of Jim going to the hospital or falling asleep while driving home from work. In the end, I couldn't stand it, so I decided to find his friends and see if they knew anything. I met his classmates in the hallway of the college and began to ask them a lot of questions in this wild frenzy. They calmed me down and told me that Jim was fine, and he just took an academic leave of absence. However, this was even more confusing to me. Why did he ignore me then? Then one of his friends finally gave me a clear answer. Jim had gotten into religion, and now he wanted to be a monk, so he couldn't have a girlfriend. There was no limit to my surprise. My jaw almost hit the floor. A monk? Did he want to become a monk? This was some kind of madness. I thought that his friends were just joking, and I decided to go straight to his house and find everything out. All the way there, I had these thoughts in my head, and when I arrived at his house, I was already on edge. I was ready to tear him apart for ignoring me and for playing this damn joke on me. So when the door opened and I saw Jim, I immediately started yelling at him. Oh, I didn't censor my words. At one point, I almost lost my voice from screaming, and I was red as a tornado from my anger. I insulted him one last time and was about to leave, but as I turned to the door, I saw Jim's parents, who unfortunately had overheard our entire conversation. Jim's father asked if he really intended to become a monk, and after a short pause, my boyfriend nodded. Then I just ran to my car and cried for a long time. I spent the next few days as a monk myself. I just moped around in my room and cried all the time and didn't leave the house. I completely lost my appetite, and for 2 days I didn't eat anything except a tub of ice cream. I was very sad because I loved Jim, and I was very sorry that he did this to me, because I didn't want to lose him. My crying was interrupted by the doorbell. Jim and his parents were standing in the doorway, but I barely recognized him because he had changed. His hair, he was completely bald, and he was wearing some strange clothing. While I was standing there completely confused, he apologized to me. He said he was sorry, but he had found himself in religion. Right now, his parents were taking him to church, and then he was going to some monastery near the edge of the state line. Then he hugged me and left. As soon as the door closed, I just burst into tears. The fact that it wasn't really a joke only made it more painful for me. This time, however, I didn't grieve for long. The fact is that real bandits came to my house. I'm not kidding. I was home alone and my parents were at work. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and said it was a delivery. But as soon as I opened the door, I was abruptly pushed back by 2 people, and they just burst into the house and started looking for something. I ran to the phone to call the police, but one of them tried to calm me down and said they weren't there for me. They were looking for Jim. I was just shaking with fear and didn't understand what was happening. It turned out that my ex-boyfriend owed them a large sum of money, and they wanted to find him to get their money back. When they didn't find him, they left, but they warned me not to even think about going to the police or Jim would go to jail. What the hell had my life become? This is just some really not funny sitcom. My boyfriend becomes a monk, and now it turns out that he owes a lot of money to some thugs? I wasn't going to just sit back and take this, so I went to Jim's parents and told them everything right away. We decided that Jim was in trouble and needed to be found urgently. I found out the address of his best friend and we went to see him. We were lucky to find Jim sleeping peacefully on the couch at his classmate's house. We woke him up screaming and started a big fight. In the end, Jim finally told us the whole truth. Jim had been gambling for months. It was his evening part-time job. Every time he said he was going to work at the office, he would go to his new friend's house and they would play poker until the morning. It was for this reason that he began to distance himself from me. Recently, he lost a large amount of money. Jim wanted to win it back, but he lost even more trying to do that. And now he owed money to some very unsavory people. Of course, normal people don't play poker in basements. So Jim's parents and my reaction was completely normal. We started yelling at him, calling him crazy. But what was done, and it was necessary to focus on solving this problem. However, Jim's father said that he was already a grown man, and if he had gotten himself into this problem, then he had to get himself out of it by himself. Then his parents left, and Jim started begging me to help him. He already had a plan, and he could fix it. Jim sold his car and raised enough money to pay back the debt. After that, we could be together again, and our lives would return to normal. Oh, damn, that was so manipulative. He knew that I loved him and I would not refuse to help him. I agreed, but only on one condition. He had to swear that he would never get into trouble like this again, and that he would be as honest and open as possible with me. After that, we took action. The next night, Jim came to my house and told me that everything was ready. All I had to do was drive Jim to the meeting place so he could hand over the money. But as soon as we arrived in the right area, I started to get nervous. It wasn't the best neighborhood. Half of the houses looked abandoned and broken down, and there were some very strange people near the other houses who kept looking at my car. Soon we arrived at the right house, and Jim said he would be out in 5 minutes. Oh, those 5 minutes seemed like a freaking eternity for me. I was constantly looking around. Oh, I was very scared. My palms were sweating with fear. Suddenly, Jim ran back out of the house, jumped in the car, and started yelling at me to push the pedal to the metal. From fright, I sank the pedal to the floor. In a shock, I could not stop pushing on the gas, and we flew through an intersection at a speed of about 95 miles per hour. I'm afraid to even think about it now. We could have easily hit a tree or another car and gotten really hurt. As soon as I came to my senses, I stopped the car and demanded that Jim explain everything. But what he said scared me even more. It turns out that he did not go to pay back the debt. This was the house where they played poker. Jim somehow knew that no one would be in the house at that time, so he just broke in and took the money that those bandits kept in there. In that same second, I almost went crazy with anger. He committed the robbery without telling me a word about it. He was going to solve this problem once and for all, but he committed a new crime? In addition, now he had made me an accomplice. Damn it, Jim. How could he do this to me? I yelled at him, kicked him out of the car, and went home. After that, I lived in fear for a week. I was afraid to leave the house and go to my college classes. I always thought that someone would be following me and would tap me on my shoulder. I would turn around and it would be a police officer. And then the arrest, the trial, and I would go to jail as an accessory to a robbery. My constant paranoia made me afraid of every noise and every car that passed my house. The idea that these bandits would come to my house again, and this time I would definitely get hurt, was especially scary. What the hell had my life become? And soon it did happen. I was at home and I heard a knock on the door. 2 police officers were standing at my doorstep, and at that moment I was really triggered emotionally and I completely lost my nerve. I started crying like a little girl and told them everything about how Jim lost the money and how he committed the theft. Oh, even though it caused a lot of problems, I felt really relieved after I said it. It was as if a huge burden had been lifted from my shoulders. But in fact, the police had come to see me about a completely different case. They were looking for the thugs that Jim owed money to. They were involved in some serious crime, and the police somehow tracked their phones and found out they were here ones. So I gave them Jim by accident, but I don't regret it a bit. Then I found out that Jim had gotten arrested, and I had to testify against him. I didn't want to do it for a long time, but then I decided that he should be punished. He was in deep trouble and he could have dragged me down with him. Now he had to realize that he had made a mistake and that he was to pay for it. This will be a good lesson for him. You should never lie and hide something from people who love you.